A veteran diver of 20 years who had certified 300 students took on a student on a specialty course dive in the deep waters of Stony Cove. However, right in the deep waters, the student started having problems with his buoyancy, which was the beginning of a horrible incident about to unfold. Stony Cove is a distinctive diving hub in the United Kingdom, located in landlocked Leicestershire. The uniqueness of this diving destination lies in its natural freshwater springs, which give the Stony Cove diving lake crystal clear waters, inviting divers to experience the wonders beneath the surface. Remarkably, Stony Cove is the only location worldwide where underwater archaeologists and divers can immerse themselves in exploring the captivating remains of a genuine Elizabethan shipwreck, all within an inland setting. Diving into the depths of Stony Cove is not limited to only seasoned professionals. It also welcomes almost anyone fascinated by the idea of scuba diving. For those discovering interest, Stony Cove offers the opportunity to progress and acquire the essential skills needed to transform into a certified underwater explorer or even a professional diver. Today, under the guidance of seasoned experts, people ranging from beginners to seasoned divers can embark on explorations in the 115-foot deep lake. At the age of 40, Richard Stansfield from Northampton distinguished himself as an electrician, celebrated for his meticulous approach to work and his passion for innovative problem-solving. In addition to his professional engagement, Richard was renowned for his love for diving, a passion that he wholeheartedly pursued during weekends. Diving into the depths of Stony Cove became a routine for him. Holding an advanced open water certification, he had the expertise to navigate and explore the more challenging and intricate sections of this underwater body. Impressively, Richard had accomplished a total of 30 dives. The other person in this story is dive instructor Nigel Craig. Nigel is not just a dive instructor. He's also a builder and a seasoned diver with 20 years of experience. His interest in diving began when he was just a boy, but it wasn't until he had his own family that he decided to take PADI training courses. At first, he learned the ropes of diving abroad, and later, he continued honing his passion at Stony Cove. Nigel started his diving journey at Stony Cove in 1996. His weekly routine included attending pool sessions and spending Saturdays at the Dive Northampton shop. Sundays were reserved for diving adventures. Over the years, he steadily progressed through his training, and in 2013, he achieved the prestigious title of PADI Master Instructor. At the time of the incident we're about to delve into, Nigel had successfully certified 300 students and played a crucial role in helping many others earn their diving certifications. It's worth mentioning that he was a frequent instructor for the deep diver course at the same spot in Stony Cove where our story unfolds. On Sunday, July 24, 2016, dive instructor Nigel Craig kicked off a PADI Deep Specialty Course dive for Richard Stansfield. This particular dive was the second part of the PADI Deep Specialty course, and Richard had already successfully completed the first dive as part of his advanced open water program. The purpose of this course is to teach divers important things about deep sea exploration. They learn about how pressure increases as they go deeper, leading to effects like using up more air and having to spend less time underwater. Divers also discover how a phenomenon called narcosis can impact their judgment underwater. Additionally, they understand the significance of safety stops to reduce the risk of decompression sickness. During this dive, the participants are allowed to go as deep as 131 feet. Before reaching the maximum depth, they need to navigate a short distance underwater. When it's time to return to the surface, they make a controlled ascent using either gauges or a dive computer to ensure a safe rate of ascent. The course standards dictate a mandatory 3-minute safety stop at 16 feet before emerging from the water. This comprehensive training helps divers like Richard gain a deeper understanding of the challenges and safety measures associated with exploring the depths of the underwater world. On that particular day, Richard was the sole student under Nigel's guidance, and accompanying them was dive master Carol Tokarczyk, someone Richard had dived with before. Nigel and Carol were no strangers, having worked together on multiple occasions. The trio gathered at the van, where Nigel took the time to go over the course knowledge reviews with Richard. Before gearing up for the dive, Nigel conducted a thorough dive briefing, ensuring everyone was on the same page. Nigel and Carol, both equipped with twin sets, showcased their gear to Richard, pointing out the differences compared to a single-cylinder setup. To ensure safety, they performed a complete potty buddy check, ensuring that all equipment was in order. After the briefing and safety check, the team swam approximately 328 feet to a descent line marked the Hydro Box, a metal structure submerged 115 feet deep. This structure, originally used for commercial diver training, served as a unique underwater landmark for recreational instructors like Nigel and his team during deep dives. The team paused at the marker buoy to give Richard, who was a bit out of breath from the swim, some time to catch his breath. It took about 10 minutes to reach the deepest part of the dive, which was around 105 feet. Richard had some trouble equalizing, a process to balance pressure in the ears, making it a bit slower. Once they reached the bottom, Nigel checked the air supply. Richard signaled that he started with 250 bars in his 12-liter cylinder and now had 150 bars left. Nigel and Carol, who used 12-liter twin sets, had plenty of air for themselves, and extra in case someone needed it. During the navigation exercise, Richard had a bit of trouble with his buoyancy, meaning he had difficulty staying at the right depth. Nigel decided to pause the exercise and have Richard try it again, which he successfully did. At this point, Nigel checked the air again and got a signal that there were 60 bars left. Nigel was surprised because Richard's air supply was much lower than expected, given the earlier check. To be safe, he decided to end the dive and start going back up. Nigel told Carol to shine his torch on Richard's gauge and keep an eye on his air as they ascended using the shot line. During the ascent, Richard's computer alarmed that his air was low. Nigel saw this and decided it was time for Richard and Carol to share air. Carol gave Richard his regulator, switched to a spare one, and everything went smoothly. However, around 59 feet deep, Richard signaled that he was out of air, even though there was still some air left in his tank. Nigel was puzzled. He checked the regulators, purged them, and everything seemed fine. Nigel, reassuring Richard with hand signals, decided to let him breathe from his own tank. Despite Nigel knowing he had enough air and that his regulator was working fine, Richard signaled once again that he was out of air. Nigel was confused and did the standard calming signals, checking everything again, got confirmation that all was well, and continued the ascent. As they neared the depth for the safety stop, Nigel, considering that Richard had enough air and seemed calm, decided to stick to the planned safety stop, which is a necessary part of the course and standard for diving. However, 2 minutes into the safety stop, Richard suddenly seemed panicky and tried to swim to the surface in a dangerous way. Nigel quickly reached out to stop him from making an unsafe ascent, but when Nigel looked into Richard's eyes, he saw something alarming. They looked glazed and lifeless, and Richard's regulator was slipping from his mouth. Nigel acted fast, putting the regulator back in and purging it, realizing that they needed to make an emergency ascent. Once at the surface, Nigel inflated Richard's buoyancy control device and started giving him rescue breaths. They called for help, and a rescue boat from Stony Cove responded. Richard, now unconscious, was taken to the shore by the rescue boat. Paramedics were there to resuscitate him, and he was then rushed to Glenfield Hospital in an ambulance. Unfortunately, despite the efforts of the medical team, Richard was pronounced dead about 5 hours later. After the incident, Craig spoke with police and later attended a voluntary interview in 2017 to clarify details. He was never treated as a suspect. Craig and his wife Della tried to move on with their lives as best they could. Then in September 2020, more than 4 years after the tragic events of July 2016, Craig received a letter saying that he would be prosecuted for gross negligence manslaughter. Surprisingly, Carol did not face any charges. This marked the beginning of a difficult and distressing period in Craig's life. During the prosecution, it was highlighted that Richard's air supply was misreported, and Nigel was implicated for not directly monitoring his students' computer readings. The case was further complicated by Richard's health conditions, including high blood pressure and traces of substances in his system. The main argument from the prosecution was that Nigel had kept Richard underwater, prioritizing a 3-minute safety stop over preventing drowning. They claimed that the safety stop wasn't necessary and that Nigel should have surfaced with a diver who was out of air. The defense responded to these accusations by bringing attention to the immersion pulmonary edema, IPO, a condition where cold water causes fluid to build up in the lungs. Dr. Wilmhurst, an expert, explained to the jury that people with high blood pressure were more likely to experience an IPO. It was revealed that Richard had hypertension, a condition he didn't mention on the medical questionnaire he filled out with Dive Northampton. The postmortem examination also showed that he had cocaine in his system. While the drug levels would have been higher during the dive, it wasn't clear how it might have affected Richard given the pressure underwater and considering his hypertension. These factors could have played a role. The defense had a strong case against the prosecution, especially with the expertise of Kevin Gurr, a technical, military, and cave diving instructor. Kevin highlighted in his report that the dive team had more than enough emergency air supply, and using it was a smart way to reduce risks. He also mentioned that since the diver was breathing and seemed calm during the air-sharing ascent, Nigel might have thought the safety stop was a good idea. After 2 days of thinking, the jury couldn't come to a decision. Surprisingly, the prosecution chose not to have a retrial, and the judge declared Nigel not guilty. However, even though the legal battle was over, the damage had already been done to Nigel and his wife Della. Nigel, who worked as a builder, lost his only way of earning money because he couldn't handle working during the month-long trial. He, along with his wife Della and their 2 kids, went through a tough time, not knowing if Nigel would end up in jail. Nigel mentioned that he would never teach again, and even thinking about diving, even just snorkeling, messes with his head, especially after what happened. We would like to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching, take a dive on the like and subscribe buttons and hit the bell icon so you get notified when we come back with another exciting diving story.